There was a time before the darkness, before the shadows whispered from beyond. A time when the world was whole. The golden sun hung high over endless emerald fields, its warmth a quiet promise of peace. Rivers ran clear, their waters a mirror of the sky, untainted by the weight of the unknown. In the great cities, towers of white stone gleamed under the morning light, their spires reaching toward the heavens, symbols of a civilization untouched by fear. Markets bustled with life, merchants calling out their wares, the scent of spice and sweet fruits dancing on the breeze, children laughing as they darted through the cobbled streets. The people flourished, unaware of the veil that protected them, ignorant of the horrors it kept at bay. They built, they loved, and they dreamed. Kings ruled with wisdom. Scholars uncovered the mysteries of the natural world, and healers brought comfort to the sick. There were no monsters lurking in the shadows, no cries echoing from unseen realms. The nights were calm, filled with the gentle hum of crickets and the soft glow of lanterns guiding travellers home. In the deepest forests, the trees stood proud and ancient, their roots entwined with the earth's very soul. The winds whispered secrets of old, but none spoke of terror, only the harmony of life, the cycle of seasons, the quiet wisdom of nature. The mountains rose as mighty sentinels, their peaks dusted with snow, watching over the lands below as they had since time began. It was a world of light, of order, of prosperity, a world where nightmares did not cross the threshold of reality, a world before the veil was torn. There was a powerful mage, Zivaris, feared and respected, a master of the arcane arts. But knowledge was not enough. He sought dominion over all things. Legends say he began delving into forbidden magic, seeking the secrets of creation and destruction. He discovered the veil, the thin layer that separated this world from the next. He learned that beyond it lay creatures of unspeakable power, bound by laws older than time itself, with dark rituals and incantations that twisted the very fabric of existence, unleashed horrors beyond comprehension, ripping the veil between worlds apart. He called forth creatures from beyond. Chaos ensued, and this began the end of the world. The balance was shattered. It was Lady Silmora, a beautiful and powerful enchantress who foresaw the doom that would come if his power was left unchecked. But by the time she acted, it was too late. The creatures had already spilled into the world, and the war had begun. The sorcerer's army was vast, grotesque monsters, spirits of pure malice, and things with no name, all spilling from the breaches. Humans and animals fought gallantly side by side, but their efforts were futile. The darkness crept from city to city, leaving only destruction in its wake. Lady Silmora, with the last of her strength, called upon her dear Corvid friends to gather near her. They understood her call and freely sacrificed themselves to her. In the eternal fire, she forged the 3 guardian clans. The first clan she forged was the Corvus Nocturne, 500 fierce and mighty warriors. She then forged 500 Dreadwing, weavers of the veil and cursed with sight and memory, forever recording history. And 10 Mourngrim, ethereal judges and punishers to maintain the balance between the 2 worlds. Orrith Morvayne, the first Dreadwing forged from the magical fire, was in the sky and the land. Orrith fought, not with steel, but with cunning and magic, luring monsters back into the veil, sealing rifts, and guiding the warriors below. Many Corvids were torn apart in the chaos, unable to escape the slaughter. Though immortal in age, they were not impervious to claw, tooth, or dark magic. Corvus Nocturne, the warriors and defenders, fought valiantly, but were slaughtered in vast numbers. The Dreadwing clan watched, documenting history, fighting, and weaving frantically to contain the breaches. The Maungrim, the Enforcers, the most formidable Corvid clan, sought to judge and punish Zevaris and his monsters he released from the depths. But even they could not kill him, for he had become more than mortal. He was no longer just a sorcerer. He had bound himself to the veil, feeding off its energy, growing stronger with each passing day. Then, in a final act, Lady Silmora, weak and tired, seeing the destruction around her, she used her last breath to cast one final spell, forging the clan's purpose into eternity. He was gone. The price paid, but the price was high. 1,010 Corvid protectors became only 50, and the Dreadwing numbers fell into obscurity. Orrith witnessed the death of almost all his kin. The Corvid clans continued to fight the evil, and monsters released. They continued to repair the veil. Years passed, then decades, and the world rebuilt itself. The world forgot the war, forgot Zevaris Vylor, the harbinger of doom, the brave humans, the forest animals, Lady Silmora, the powerful enchantress, and her corvids that saved the world. Orrith Morvayne bared the burden of a sharp and everlasting memory, a memory meant to endure the passing of time. He did not know why Lady Silmora would have cursed the Dreadwings so. The veil is failing, slowly rotting and unraveling. More breaches and more creatures are slipping through. Some of these monsters had lived hidden among humanity for centuries, undisturbed, and hidden away from the Corvids and humans. But others, new, confused and reckless, exposing themselves to the modern world. For the first time in recorded history, humans were seeing things they shouldn't be. Their government has taken interest, desperate to understand. They began hunting monsters, capturing and experimenting on them. Orrith had never concerned himself with mortal affairs. Humans could not see the Dreadwings or any Corvids that rose from the eternal fire. They blended seamlessly into flocks of ordinary crows, always unseen. However, they could reveal their voices with a bit of magic if they chose, but there was no need for that. Humans mindless, wasteful, and unbothered. No understanding of nature and its fragility. The weave on this veil, once repaired, has been stretched. That's odd. Orrith suddenly felt a tingling sensation. He knows something from the veil is here. Thrashing, branches breaking, and heavy breathing and footsteps feverishly running through the forest floor. It's getting nearer. Orrith is unamused. The veil requires too many repairs. I don't have time for this. What is all that racket? Orrith cocked his head, slowly turning, looking through the dense forest. He sees a man, curious, something else. Large antlers, thin, pale. A towering figure with sharp claws and hooves for feet running behind the man. Look at this idiot. Alone in the woods with a Wendigo, he's going to get himself killed. Orrith contemplates letting the man meet his demise, but just for a moment. His sacrifice. His oath has always been to protect the humans and their world. But he has grown tired of the humans. He swoops down from his branch with lightning speed and aims straight for the man's head. He goes down like a brick. He swoops up and heads straight for the grotesque and malnourished horned creature. He grabs it by its antlers and flies back to the tree where he once was peacefully sitting and weaving. With his sharp and strong claws, he takes hold of the stretched veil and rips it wide, With his other claw, he shoves the creature back into the veil. He quickly begins to weave and conceal it. Once finished, Orrith's keen eyes shifted downward, noting the stirring figure on the forest floor below. With deliberate grace, he descended, hopping silently from branch to branch until he perched close enough to inspect the groggy human. "All bronze, no brains," Orrith remarked dryly. The man jolted awake at the voice, eyes wide with panic. "What? Who's there? Who said that?" His voice cracked, betraying fear and confusion. Amused, Orrith tilted his head slightly, watching the man's frantic search for the source of the voice. "I must have struck you too hard. You're hallucinating," Orrith mused to himself. The young man's breathing quickened, eyes darting around frantically. "Who said that? Where are you?" Now intrigued, Orrith leaned closer, his ruby-amber eyes glinting softly in the dim forest light. "Can you truly hear me?" The man's eyes slowly lifted, finally noticing the ebony crow perched above him, watching intently. He grimaced and recoiled slightly. "Geez, you're one ugly bird. Go away." "Not nearly as dumb or ugly as you," Orrith retorted, voice dripping with disdain. Startled by the response, the man's hand flew instinctively toward his sidearm. Orrith's voice dropped to a powerful, commanding tone. "You really don't want to do that." Ignoring the warning, the man continued to inch toward his weapon. Orrith sighed, feathers rustling softly, and with a slight gesture cast a subtle stillness spell. The man's limbs suddenly froze, immobilized completely. Orrith's voice softened slightly, resonating with ancient authority. "Do not fear me, child. I mean you no harm. I am the protector of this forest." "You hit me!" the man stammered, eyes wide in disbelief. "You're talking?" "Great. 2 weeks on this job and I'm already losing it." Orrith shook his head gently, feathers glistening under a sliver of moonlight. "You should be able to move again." The man cautiously flexed his fingers, regaining control, though his confusion remained. He stared incredulously at Orrith. How are you talking?" The crow leaned forward, eyes narrowing slyly. "How are you talking, He paused briefly, then added with dry wit, "You're welcome, by the way." "You want me to thank you for slugging me?" The man's voice dripped with sarcasm as he brushed dirt and leaves from his gear, remnants of the chaotic pursuit with the Wendigo still evident. Orrith exhaled deeply, voice tinged with a note of weary nostalgia. "I haven't spoken to a human in a very long time. Now I recall why." He fluffed his dark feathers impatiently and took off into the air with a powerful stroke. The man stumbled forward, hand outstretched, calling desperately after the crow. "Hey, wait! You're just going to fly off? Come back! What happened with that creature?" Orrith's voice echoed disdainfully from above. "You presume to recall me like some common hound." His shadowy form vanished swiftly among the dense canopy. Frustrated and bewildered, the man pressed his comm urgently. "Alpha Team, this is Delta Niner. I need immediate extraction. SRC 5560 containment at level 3 has failed." Orrith spread his wings and took flight, his dark form cutting through the night like a shadow upon the wind. The forest stretched beneath him, a vast sea of shifting darkness. The scent of damp earth and pine carried upwards in the cool air. He flew with measured purpose, seeking solace in the ancient treetops where the veil between worlds was thin. Finding his perch atop a towering oak, he tucked his wings in, settling with a practiced ease. Here, high above the mortal world, he turned his attention to his true duty. The veil was damaged. Thin silken threads of silver and gold stretched before him, shimmering faintly in the moonlight. They pulsed with an unseen energy, frayed at the edges where reality had begun to warp. Orrith extended his talons, carefully drawing the strands together, weaving them back into harmony. The act was instinctive, a rhythm etched into his very being. Yet tonight, his focus was fractured. A human had heard him. His ruby-amber eyes narrowed, reflecting the silver glow of the veil. How? The ability to perceive him, truly hear him, was rare. It had been nearly 5 centuries since a mortal last understood his words. Even among those with a touch of the arcane, his kind spoke in echoes and riddles, their voices lost to time and memory. And yet, that man had responded. Orrith's grip on the woven threads tightened slightly as he sifted through his vast reservoir of memories, pulling at the echoes of the past. Margaret. Her name drifted through his mind like a whisper on the wind. It had been nearly 500 years since he last spoke with a human. She had been unlike any other. An enigma, a presence that even the creatures of the forest had gravitated toward without fear. Margaret had been a flower seller, a simple maiden by trade. Yet there had been something about her, something more. Orrith could still see her as though she stood before him now. Long black hair, dark as the space between the stars, cascading down her back in silken waves. It rivaled even his own feathers in its luster. She had moved with effortless grace, her hands delicate, yet strong as they wove crowns of blossoms to sell in the bustling village market. Animals would gather around her, drawn to an unseen warmth that radiated from her very being. Even the most skittish of creatures, deer, foxes, and birds, would rest at her feet as she hummed soft melodies to herself. It was by chance, or perhaps fate, that she first heard him. Orrith had been perched in an ancient oak, watching as she wandered through the meadow just beyond the village. She had been gathering apples, her bare feet pressing against the dewy grass, oblivious to his presence. As was his habit, he muttered to himself, lamenting the way humans trampled thoughtlessly upon the land. All that beauty, crushed beneath careless steps, he had grumbled. And then, she answered, "You could simply ask me to tread lighter, you know." Orrith had nearly lost his balance, his talons gripping the bark sharply as his head jerked toward her. She had looked up at him with an amused glint in her emerald eyes, as though the prospect of speaking to a crow was the most natural thing in the world. He had tested her, speaking again, this time directly, deliberately, and she had responded every time. At first, he assumed it was coincidence. Then, he thought it was some trick of the Fae. Eventually, he had no choice but to accept it. She could hear him. Their bond had been strange, unexpected, and maddening. Margaret was light-hearted where he was brooding, playful where he was serious. She would mock him, tease him relentlessly for his grim musings, often calling him Orrith the Dreary. And yet, he could never shake her presence. No matter how much she vexed him, he found himself drawn to her, watching over her, unwilling to leave her side. "You must take your role seriously," he had once scolded her after she had laughed at the warnings he gave her about wandering too close to the veil's thinning edges. "I do," she had protested, hands on her hips. "I just also refuse to live in fear, like some gloomy old crow who never smiles. I am incapable of smiling." "Exactly my point," she had laughed, tossing a wildflower crown over his head before skipping off. Orrith shook his feathers now, ruffling them at the memory. Even after centuries, he could still hear her laughter, still see the way the sunlight had caught the dark waves of her hair. She had been a mystery even to him, a mortal who could hear him, speak to him, defy him, and yet he had cared for her, more than he should have. She was not mortal, that much he now knew. Fey blood had run through her veins, even if she had never spoken of it. It explained so much. Her ability, her connection to nature, the way the world had bent slightly around her without her even trying. He had been blind to it then, but hindsight was cruel in its clarity. And now, here was another. Orrith stared at the veil as he finished his work, his talons lingering on the woven threads. Could the man below be the same? Could fate be weaving yet another strange bond into his existence? The thought unsettled him. With a final glance toward the distant forest floor, where the young man had vanished into the night, Orrith fluffed his feathers and let out a slow, measured breath. He would watch, and he would wait, for fate was not done with him yet.